Welcome to the Global Current. My name is Alicia Sharabali. Today in news, arms deal between France and India, minors on death row in Iran, and an analysis, UN involvement in FARC Colombia peace talks are missing a vital component, the expulsion of Swedish human rights advocate from China. And finally, we bring you an interview with NaTakallam, an Arabic language service which employs Syrian refugees. And now, Liam Scollins reports on the arms deal between France and India.
On January 25th, France and India struck a historic arms deal estimated to be worth $9 billion. Throughout the course of last year, diplomats from the two countries negotiated the deal. According to Reuters, certain aspects of the deal have not yet been finalized, but India and France have signed an agreement to complete the transaction. Prior to this agreement, India sought to make a deal with a private French company. This new deal will provide 36 French-made Rafale fighter jets to the Indian Air Force. French President François Hollande and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi are meeting in New Delhi to discuss relations between their nations. Reuters reports that President Hollande plans to finalize the financial aspects of the Rafale deal and several other economic ventures with Prime Minister Modi. These projects include improving India's infrastructure and additional investment in India's industrial sector. French Finance Minister Michel Seton stated that French companies plan to increase their investments in India to $10 billion over the next 5 years. Although President Hollande's visit to India focused on economic agreements between India and France, Hollande also focused on the issue of terrorism. In a speech recorded by France 24 in New Delhi, President Hollande directly stated that France will continue to work with its allies to fight ISIS. Hollande specifically stated that he plans to intensify France's cooperation with India in the fight against ISIS.
We have decided, Prime Minister Modi and myself, to intensify our cooperation against terrorism, to strengthen our intelligence exchanges, to fight even more against the trafficking on which terrorism thrives.
Prime Minister Modi stated that India seeks to further its alliance with France, one of India's longest-standing allies, through the upcoming strategic projects and partnerships. This is Liam Scollins for the Global Current.
Yilan Du reports on capital punishment in Iran.
Amnesty International records indicate that Iran leads the world in number of minors on death row. According to the New York Times, Amnesty International documented the execution of at least 73 juveniles in Iran from 2005 to 2015, and that 160 juvenile offenders are languishing on the country's death row. Iran is a signatory of international conventions regarding the rights of children, and according to Yahoo News, the Iranian judiciary chief Ayatollah Sadeh Lariani said in 2014, "We have no execution of people under the age of 18. However, the UN figure released in 2014 claims at least 160 minors are on death row in Iran. Many of these minors spend years on death row until they turn to the legal age so they can be sentenced to death. In addition to the inhumane treatments of minors, some of the convictions are of questionable objectivity." The New York Times reports that human rights groups are pressuring Iranian authorities to realize they have to act in accordance with the international human rights standards. Although this is a cruel situation, there have been some improvements in Iran. According to Amnesty International's official website, in June 2015, Iran introduced reforms specifying that juveniles accused of a crime must be dealt with by specialized juvenile courts. Previously, juvenile offenders accused of capital crimes were generally prosecuted by adult courts. Although the introduction of specialized juvenile courts is a welcome step, it remains to be seen whether this will prevent further use of the death penalty against juvenile offenders in practice. This is Elaine Du from the Global Current.
In analysis, Megan Ferguson discusses how Colombia's economy may ruin hopes for peace with FARC without plans for disarmament.
The Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, People's Army, or FARC, paints itself as a peasant rebellion fighting for Colombia's poorest. However, the more than 220,000 who were kidnapped or killed in the guerrilla war between the Marxist group and Colombia's government were often also Colombia's poorest, which is why, in contrast to an anthem claiming guerrillas of the FARC will triumph for the people, fighting for our homeland and daily bread, the rebels have been losing ground and members since 2007. This is why FARC has been more than willing to negotiate a ceasefire and peace deal with the Colombian government. According to the New York Times on Monday, the United Nations has agreed to create a political mission to encourage long-lasting and stable peace between the two opposing groups. However, it also reports that none of the three parties involved, the UN, the Colombian government, or FARC, have devised a time frame or method for laying down and destroying weapons, an essential component of reintegrating former rebels into a peaceful society. With Colombia Finance most recently reporting an unemployment rate hovering around 7% at the end of 2015, a reintegration plan with certain steps for weapons destruction becomes especially important. If former rebels are both unable to find jobs and able to keep their arms, fighting against reintegration becomes a viable option for making a living. Reporters flocked to capture the announcement of peace talks when the Colombian government and FARC first began negotiating in July. However, in the same time frame, Bloomberg last week explains, consumer prices in Colombia have increased by almost 7%, and inflation is growing even more quickly. Colombia reports earlier this month contextualizes these percentages. The prices of potatoes, a staple in Colombia, has grown from 495 pesos to roughly 742 pesos. The increase has led civilian jokes to an impending Hunger Games. In contrast, the Daily Beast of earlier this month states FARC has found a convenient means of avoiding Colombia's economic troubles: smuggling, from cocaine to cattle. These operations' success relied on FARC's reputation for strength and protecting their smuggled goods, made possible by the group's ability to procure a large stock of weapons, a feat significantly more likely as a group than as an individual. The New York Times points out, the combination of Colombia's current economic turmoil and FARC's recent success could spell doom for a UN-sanctioned peace plan lacking steps for weapons destruction. Reintegrating former FARC members without first destroying their weapons not only allows members of a group adjusted to violence access to power over their neighbors while reintegrating, but also encourages former members to return to smuggling or rebellion as an organized group in order to obtain food or make wages outside the legal Colombian economy. This is Megan Ferguson reporting for the Global Current.
Von Rogers analyzes the expulsion of a Swedish human rights advocate.
Swedish national Peter Dahlin was expelled from China after being detained, reports the BBC. Dahlin began and ran the non-governmental organization Chinese Urgent Action Working Group, whose mission, according to its profile on idealist.org, is to strengthen Chinese rule of law by protecting human rights activists and supporting and training rural lawyers. Earlier this month, the Shanghaiist reported that Dahlin and others were spirited away and detained in a crackdown on human rights activists. Dahlin was about to board a plane on January 4th when he was detained at the Beijing airport. Later, while in custody, his confession was recorded and broadcast on CCTV News.
I have violated Chinese law through my activities here. I have caused harm to the Chinese government. I have hurt the feelings of the Chinese people. I apologize sincerely for this, and I am very sorry that this ever happened.
Dahlin's organization claims that the confession was forced, and that instead of detaining the activist, the Chinese government would do better to simply deny his visa when he attempted to re-enter the country. China has been clear for years about its policies, emphasizing its right to national security and stability. In any negotiation between China and other countries or organizations, especially at the UN, China has included a clause called the One China policy that essentially says Taiwan is a part of China. More notoriously, the Chinese government has censored much of its internet in order to prevent outside influence in the name of national security. In light of these facts, the detaining and expulsion of a human rights lawyer who claims to uphold the principles of rule of law would appear contradictory. However, Peter Dahlin and his organization have been accused of disturbing the peace to serve as an anti-China force, according to the BBC. The Chinese Foreign Ministry is satisfied with accusing Dahlin of using foreign money to disturb the peace. Since Dahlin's famous 10-minute confession on CCTV News, a spokesperson for the Chinese Foreign Ministry told reporters that this was a clear-cut case because Dahlin had admitted his guilt and apologized for his crimes. Dahlin and others from his organization are among many expats and foreign nationals who were either detained or disappeared within the last month, including the famous Hong Kong booksellers. Some of Dahlin's co-workers are still detained, and the Swedish government has issued a statement, also cited in the same BBC article, that negotiations to free them continue. On the one hand, the crackdown by Chinese police on so-called disturbers of the peace was Orwellian and exemplifies why Dalian started his NGO to build respect for the rule of law in the first place. On the other hand, China does have a right to its national security and to do what it thinks is best for its country. Unfortunately for Dalian and other activists, they must respect the government's national policies and keep in mind that unless Chinese officials are pressured from within their own ranks to adhere more strictly to the rule of law, the activists, like others in China, must bend like a reed in the wind. Reading for Von Rogers, this is Bill Golba on the Global Current.
Finally, Emily Livade sits down with the School of Diplomacy's Alex Weber, an intern for NaTakallam, which employs Syrian refugees and serves to break down negative stereotypes.
Good morning, Global Current listeners. This is Emily Livade. As we all know, the Syrian refugee crisis is escalating. As of June 2015, there are 12 million people either internally displaced or declared refugees by the UNHCR. And while we think of major problems with the Syrian refugees, such as where should they all be located and how to make sure that extremists aren't put in with the refugees, we often don't think of the cultural and lingual problems that people face. And I am here today with Alex Weber, an intern with NaTakallam, a startup who is helping to alleviate these lingual and cultural barriers. Alex, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Emily. Thank you for having me here.
All right, so my first question is, what does NaTakallam do?
NaTakallam is a complementary as in it complements your current education, complementary language service for Arabic speakers. So in university, say I'm an Arabic student myself, I go to my classes and I learn a dialect called Modern Standard Arabic, which is sort of like the diplomatic Arabic that people speak within the United Nations, on media. It's a very proper way to speak, and not many people speak it face to face like we would just, talking on the street if we were just, having a normal conversation. What NaTakallam does is sets up a conversation between a Syrian refugee in Lebanon and an English speaker, either in the United States or in Europe or elsewhere. And they set up this Skype session where someone in the Western world or an English speaker can talk with a Syrian refugee with similar interests, ideas, and learn through immersion, essentially, the Syrian dialect of Arabic, which is something that schools don't have a standardized way of teaching. So it's extremely useful. It's something that tons of students are looking for, but they often don't know that this resource is here. And we are a recent startup. We started in July 2015, and the core goal is to just kind of establish a connection between a Syrian refugee in Lebanon and an English speaker who has a basic understanding of a formal diplomatic Arabic, but really wants to get to know this colloquial street language so they can actually go talk to real people.
So when they're speaking online, they're speaking both English and the Syrian dialect?
Well, the conversation partners that we have a functional understanding of English. Some of them do speak English. It varies from refugee to refugee. So ideally, the focus is on teaching the English speaker the Syrian dialect of Arabic. So you log on, you get onto the Skype page, and your hand-selected conversation partner is there on the other side. And then you greet them in Arabic, and you're talking in Arabic. And the Arabic that you know as a first-time user is very formal. So you're using all of these, intricacies of a language that don't really exist when you're talking to friends and family within Arabic. So at first they're speaking this diplomatic Arabic, and then it kind of gradually, through immersion, becomes more comfortable, colloquial, Shami, or Syrian or Levant dialect Arabic, which is something that, millions of people speak, but is not taught in universities because there's no formal way to teach this.
So what are the different types of Arabic?
So you have classical Arabic, which is what the Quran is written in.
Okay.
Sort of akin to Latin with the Bible. There's classical Arabic with the Quran.
So it's not very well spoken, but that's what most people are taught.
Yeah,
in the
it's
classroom?
spoken by clerics, it's spoken by imams, it's spoken by people who are dedicated to learning about the Quran. Just like people who want to learn more about the Bible may learn Hebrew or Latin or Greek. to read the Bible. So different kinds of Arabic are Maghreb, which is Moroccan Arabic, and then there's Masri, which is Egyptian Arabic, Shami, which is Levant or Syrian, Jordan, Lebanon. There's Khalij Arabic, which is Gulf Arabic, and there's smaller like dialects within those, and it varies from country to country, but those are the main 4 regions right there. And they're different enough that if you travel to Morocco on a study abroad and you learn Maghreb Arabic, it's so wildly different from going to Amman, Jordan for a study abroad and learning Shami Arabic. It's the difference between Portuguese and Romanian. You have two languages that are related in their like ancestral grandfather language of Latin, but they're just so wildly different when you hear them spoken.
So NaTakallam only helps with learning Shami. It doesn't help with the other languages?
Right now, yeah. Okay. It's focused on alleviating Syrian refugees, and they speak Syrian dialect, so they speak Shami. In speaking Shami, they can help teach people who want to learn Shami that.
So how many people has NaTakallam helped, and what are the plans to take this startup into the future?
So as of 3 months into the venture, so in October, there were 15 conversation partners, so 15 Syrian refugees who had gone through a vetting process and everything to make sure that they're fully qualified for the position, background check for obvious reasons. Mm-hmm. So there are 15 people as of right now or as of October, who are being helped with this steady flow of income, because what they're receiving is $10 American per hour. And that, the American dollar carries a different weight depending on where you go, and in the Middle East there are 15 conversation partners. Those 15 conversation partners are helping 100 English-speaking or French-speaking students who are trying to learn this Shami or colloquial Syrian dialect. And the plans for the future, they're boundless. I've had conversations with the founder, my supervisor, Aline Sarah, and she's told me that she's thought of maybe extending this to other languages, maybe incorporating a full language learning program. But everything is all up in the air as of right now, because we've been a company for 5 months, so it's still in the inception phase. Okay. We're exploding. There are 600 interested English speakers who want to be part of this, but the infrastructure is not quite there yet to handle it, because the servers can only take so much. And when you're coordinating everything through, Skype, that uses a lot of bandwidth, all the technical stuff. But the more people that sign up and the more people that help out, the more people we can help in general. So 15 in October could easily be 20 or 30 now. I could check with the founder, and the more people that sign up, the more people that are interested in helping these people, the more people we can help.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. You've mentioned a lot about the Syrians in Lebanon. Is this just for Syrians in a certain area, or is it for Syrian refugees all over the world?
Well, right. Like I've said throughout the interview so far, it's mostly focused on Syrians in Beirut, Lebanon. We have several partners in the area in Lebanon. We actually have one of the core founders of NaTakallam in Beirut. We're kind of spread out between the Congo, Guatemala, Spain, New York.
So it's very international.
Yes, it's an international venture, definitely.
So why Lebanon? Why not Jordan or France or Germany?
Right. There are 1.2 million of the 12 million you mentioned at the beginning of those refugees are in Lebanon. Now, Lebanon's population isn't that big. 1.2 million Syrian refugees in Lebanon as a country means 20% of their updated population, including the refugees, are refugees. So one out of 5 people you'll see in Lebanon, statistically speaking, would be a Syrian refugee, which is an astounding figure. Now, due to the stars aligning and us having partnerships with people in Beirut and knowing the people that we know, we started up there, and alleviating the stress that the Syrians are going through. The small economy can't handle, a 120%, sudden increase like they've seen. These people actually are not allowed to have jobs in the Lebanese economy.
So it's more for their mental sanity, so they have something to do, they're working on interpersonal skills, and they feel like they're helping people by teaching them a language.
Yes, in part. But also, so a Syrian refugee can't go to Lebanon for work as a refugee because you're a refugee status.
Okay.
And that it's hard because how do you grow with something that, in a place where you can't work, you can't grow, And these people are, doctors and lawyers who haven't finished their schooling yet because of the unfortunate crisis that you see right now throughout Syria. And these people are going to Lebanon. And this is a chance for them to work in the American market because, we're based out of New York, and not in the Lebanese market. It's giving them a chance to grow. It's giving them a chance to talk with people. It's a bonding experience. It's a cultural experience. It's an interpersonal experience. It's breaking down walls. And it's reminding refugees that, they're not just their title of a refugee. They're people. They have their aspirations too. And
so these are people who want to work internationally in the future?
Potentially. I haven't met all of the conversation partners, but I know these people are very motivated people, very intelligent people. Everyone has their interests and their hobbies, and it's just what we're doing. Sometimes it takes me back what we're doing, even sometimes, because it's so cool.
Yeah, it really is. So how are you breaking down these cultural barriers and negative stereotypes?
Well, I would say the process itself naturally invites a cultural exchange. You're sitting here and you're Skyping, like everyone's used Skype nowadays. You're sitting here and you're Skyping with someone who's thousands of miles away from you in a region that is, so fundamentally different from the Western world. And I've been to the Gulf, so I know the Arab world. When I went there, was a shock. Sundays are your Mondays.
Did you have certain ideas of the Middle East before you went there that were very different once you arrived?
Oh yeah, I definitely thought people weren't going to be receptive to Westerners. But, then you go there and, you have these ideas that, you get from the media and just from living in a place where you're told people don't like Americans or people don't like Westerners. Mm-hmm. And then you go, and it's not people don't like Westerners, it's people don't like rude or uninviting people. So if you go and you're rude and uninviting to people, then of course people aren't going to be receptive. But if you're willing to go to someplace and willing to learn about their culture and want to know their language and want to know their way of life, people are going to be really, they're going to welcome you with open arms.
So this is basically giving the people the experience that you had without having to travel thousands of miles by airplane to go to the Gulf region and discover that on their own.
Arabic lessons in the U.S. alone can cost up to $50 an hour, and that's crazy. Trying to talk with someone who's been in the U.S. for a long time and knows that their skill is very marketable. That's a crazy price to pay for half an hour or an hour of talking. Mm-hmm. And then study abroad is so expensive nowadays, especially with credits and everything, that not everyone can afford to do it. I'm extremely lucky I got the scholarship that I got to go and do that. I know that if I didn't have that, I would not have been able to go and learn. I learned Khalij Arabic. So I know I wouldn't have been able to do that had I not gotten that scholarship. So this sort of eliminates the need for a direct travel as a student in university. It's $15 an hour was at least the going rate in October. This is where I'm getting most of my statistics from. And 2/3 of that, so $10 would go to the Syrian refugee, and then $5 gets directly reinvested into the infrastructure. None of it, goes to a for-profit as of now, because the best thing you do with the business, you reinvest. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of Westerners have this idea of a refugee as someone who's curled up in the ground with a blanket or in tarp tents in Calais, France, who are helpless and are just, laying in, desolation and poverty. But, while that's the case for, thousands and thousands of refugees, that's not all of them. And that doesn't mean that they're not intelligent. That doesn't mean that they're not, these people had lives until they were destroyed by Daesh. Daesh is the Arabic acronym for who we refer to in English as ISIS, which is translated as the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, the Islamic State in Iraq, and Al-Shams, which translates to the Levant, which is where you get ISIL. You get all of these different English translations, but the Arabic translation itself, Daesh, or the acronym in Arabic Daesh, is particularly hated by members of that cult. What else can you call it?
A lot of things, apparently.
Apparently. And because it's not representative of what they want to be. It's other Arabs refuting who they say they are.
So these are the kind of cultural things that you can learn just by speaking one-on-one with somebody from that region.
Oh, definitely. So the conversational partners are not all one-dimensional. They're not all the same person. There are, like I said, there are lawyers, there are architects, there are journalists, there are international relation people. There are lots of studied refugees who don't have a way to put their knowledge to use right now because they don't have an in the Lebanese market. And this is where they can talk with myself. So if I had a conversation partner in Lebanon and we were just talking, we could talk about international politics, like what's going on in the United Nations, what's going on over in Syria and Lebanon, what's going on in China, and just it's a natural way to break down barriers. Because Islamophobia and Arabophobia is rampant in the Western world, because of these people who are hurting the 99% of the Arab world that is not them. And I think it's important to really focus on broadening your horizons, opening up your eyes and seeing that not everyone who's a different color from yourself or comes from a different culture is bad. I think that's something a lot of people need to remind themselves on a subconscious level.
How, if one would be interested in becoming part of NaTakallam and setting up one of these relationships, how could they go about doing that?
Well, NaTakallam, if you're looking to learn Shami Arabic, NaTakallam's a great source, and there's a website. So our website is natakallam.com, NaTakallam.com. And if you didn't catch all of that, if you Google most of those letters, you'll come up with it. And if you're interested in learning Shami Arabic, that's a fantastic place to go. That's a fantastic place to start out because you're making an impact yourself by learning a dialect that would help you and put you in a strategic advantage, to have these conversational skills. But if you're more interested in helping out NaTakallam as a venture or as a startup business itself, we're always looking for exposure too. So if you say you don't speak Arabic or you have no interest in learning Arabic yourself, but you have a friend who is die-hard learning university level diplomatic Arabic, and they want to learn or they're looking for someone to converse with, this is a fantastic way to broaden your horizons and learn that Arabic that is so hard to find in a standardized university setting. And if you know the professor at your university who speaks Arabic or is teaching Arabic, telling them about this, we're always looking for partnerships with universities. We're always looking for partnerships with NGOs, other ventures who are looking to help refugees, because that's one of the main points of NaTakallam, is to help the refugees, help the customers, helping everybody. It's that's how I see it. That's what it's about.
Yeah, definitely a very cool way to learn a language and also at the same time breaking down stereotypes and cultural barriers. And that's about all the time we have. My guest today was Alex Weber, an intern at NaTakallam, and this is Emily Livaday for The Global Current.
Thank you for tuning into this week's episode of The Global Current. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. I'm Alicia Sharabali, and we'll see you next week.
The Global Current is brought to you by the School of Diplomacy and International Relations at Seton Hall University. Our executive producer is Alicia Sharabali. Our associate producer is Bill Golda. Our news editor is John Jadot, and our analysis editor is Blythe Brady. Our interview segment is produced by Emily Livaday. The Global Current theme song is Acid Jazz by Kevin MacLeod. You've been listening to The Global Current on WSOU 89.5 FM, Seton Hall's Pirate Radio.